Today, a profound and preventable humanitarian crisis is unfolding across Nigeria. Far from the bustling cities and corridors of power, millions of ordinary people are caught in a devastating storm of violence. This is not a distant problem. It is a daily nightmare for families who have lost everything. Their homes have been turned to ash, their communities emptied, and their hopes for a peaceful future shattered. The scale of this suffering is immense, touching every corner of the nation, from the arid northeast to the fertile plains of the Middle Belt. It is a crisis of human dignity, where the fundamental right to life and safety is violated with terrifying regularity, leaving a trail of grief and despair. The numbers alone paint a horrifying picture of the catastrophe. Across the country, it is estimated that well over 3 million people have been forced to flee their homes, becoming internally displaced persons, or IDPs. These are not just statistics. They are farmers, teachers, children, and elders who once had stable lives. Since 2023, the violence has escalated dramatically, with over 10,000 people killed in attacks across the Middle Belt alone. In states like Benue and Plateau, entire villages have been systematically erased. In June 2025, for instance, a series of coordinated attacks in Benue State claimed over 200 lives in a matter of hours, a massacre that local leaders described as a genocidal invasion. The violence is relentless and brutal. Attackers, often arriving in the dead of night, show no mercy. They burn houses, barns filled with precious harvests, and places of worship, ensuring that survivors have nothing to return to. In April 2025, a single overnight raid on Zeke village in Plateau State left more than 50 people dead, many of them women and children. Just days before that, a similar attack in a neighboring area killed another 40. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a calculated pattern of terror designed to drive people from their ancestral lands, creating a landscape of fear and permanent loss for countless Nigerian citizens. This wave of violence is considered by some analysts to be even deadlier than the long-running Boko Haram insurgency. The conflict has crippled the nation's ability to feed itself, as farmers who produce much of the country's food are either killed or displaced. They can no longer safely access their lands, leading to widespread food shortages and starvation in many affected communities. Families who once thrived on their own harvests are now completely dependent on aid, if they can even get it. This crisis, therefore, is not just about violence. It is a systemic collapse of security, livelihood, and the very social fabric that holds communities together. For those who manage to escape the massacres, life becomes a grueling struggle for survival. Fleeing with nothing but the clothes on their backs, they seek refuge wherever they can find it, in overcrowded and under-resourced IDP camps, in the homes of distant relatives, or in the shadows of nearby towns. Their daily existence is defined by uncertainty and deprivation. The trauma of the attacks they witnessed haunts them, while the anxiety of what the future holds is a constant burden. They have lost not just their homes and possessions, but their sense of place and identity, transformed overnight from self-sufficient citizens into people reliant on the kindness of strangers. Inside the makeshift camps, conditions are often dire. Families are crammed into flimsy tents or unfinished buildings with little to no privacy. Access to clean water, food, and basic sanitation is a daily challenge, creating a fertile ground for the spread of diseases like cholera and malaria. Children, who make up a large portion of the displaced population, are the most vulnerable. Many have stopped going to school, their education abruptly cut short. They suffer from malnutrition and the deep psychological scars of violence, having seen things no child should ever have to witness. Their laughter is replaced by a quiet fear, their futures stolen by a conflict they cannot comprehend. The attackers are a complex mix of actors, which makes the situation even more difficult to resolve. In the northeast, jihadist groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP continue their insurgency, seeking to establish a hardline Islamic state. In the northwest and north-central regions, heavily armed criminal gangs, often referred to as bandits, engage in mass kidnappings and raids for profit. But in the Middle Belt, the violence is most often described as a conflict between nomadic herders, who are mostly Fulani Muslims, and sedentary farming communities, who are predominantly Christian. This fight is driven by competition over land and water, made worse by climate change and population growth. However, many victims and local leaders strongly reject the simple narrative of farmer-herder clashes. They point to the sophisticated weapons used by the assailants and the systematic nature of the attacks as evidence of something more sinister. They see a deliberate campaign of ethnic cleansing and land grabbing aimed at permanently displacing them from their ancestral homes. The attackers are not just fighting for resources. They are destroying a way of life. This perception deepens the divisions and mistrust, making peace seem like an ever more distant dream for those who have lost everything. The primary responsibility for stopping this violence and protecting every citizen lies squarely with the Nigerian government and its security forces. Yet, there is a painful and widespread consensus among victims, community leaders, and human rights organizations that they have fundamentally failed in this duty. Report after report details a shocking pattern of inaction. Communities have repeatedly sent warnings to security agencies about impending attacks, only to be ignored. When the violence erupts, help often arrives too late, or not at all. This persistent failure has created a vacuum of safety, leaving millions of people exposed and defenseless against armed groups. This inaction has bred a deep sense of abandonment and betrayal. Many Nigerians in affected areas no longer trust the state to protect them. Some even accuse security forces of indifference or, in some cases, outright collusion with the attackers. The government's official narrative, which frequently downplays the massacres as mere clashes, further angers victims who feel their suffering is being dismissed. After the June 2025 slaughter in Benue, the paramount ruler of the Tiv nation forcefully rejected this language, calling it a dishonest attempt to avoid accountability for what he termed a genocidal invasion. This disconnect between the government's words and the people's reality has shattered public confidence. Impunity is the fuel that keeps the fire of this crisis burning. The perpetrators of these heinous crimes are rarely arrested, investigated, or brought to justice. They operate with the knowledge that there will be no consequences for their actions, which only emboldens them to commit more atrocities. This lack of accountability sends a devastating message to the victims that their lives do not matter. It creates a vicious cycle where communities, feeling unprotected by the state, may be tempted to take up arms themselves, leading to further escalations of retaliatory violence and tearing the country further apart. International partners also have a crucial role to play. While the world's attention is often focused elsewhere, nations and global bodies must use their influence to press the Nigerian government for concrete action. This includes providing support for security sector reform, funding humanitarian aid, and insisting on accountability for human rights abuses. However, as seen with recent threats of foreign military intervention from the United States in November 2025, any international involvement must be handled with extreme care. Nigerian civil society and victims themselves have been clear they do not want foreign boots on the ground. They want a Nigerian-led solution, supported, not dictated by the international community. The time for excuses and delays is over. Real change cannot wait. A series of urgent and decisive actions must be taken immediately to pull Nigeria back from the brink. First and foremost, there must be independent and transparent investigations into all major attacks. The goal should be to identify not only the perpetrators on the ground, but also their sponsors and enablers, no matter how powerful they may be. Justice must be swift and visible to restore faith in the rule of law and break the cycle of impunity that has allowed this violence to flourish for so long. Second, security strategies must be completely overhauled. Instead of reactive deployments that arrive after a village has been destroyed, there must be a proactive focus on intelligence gathering and community-based policing. Security forces need to be better equipped, motivated, and held accountable for their mandate to protect all citizens, regardless of their ethnicity or religion. Operations must be paired with robust human rights safeguards to ensure that security forces are seen as protectors, not another source of fear. This includes strengthening local vigilante groups and integrating them into a formal community security framework under proper oversight. Third, a massive and sustained humanitarian response is desperately needed. Emergency aid, food, water, shelter, and medical care must reach all displaced persons without delay. But aid is not a long-term solution. The government must create secure conditions that allow people to voluntarily and safely return to their homes and lands. This requires not only driving out attackers, but also implementing new land use regulations that address the root causes of resource conflicts. These rules must be fair, just, and developed in consultation with all affected communities, both farmers and herders. Ultimately, all efforts to end this crisis must be grounded in an unwavering respect for human rights. Every action, from security operations to the distribution of aid, must be monitored by independent observers to prevent abuse and ensure fairness. The voices of the victims must be at the center of every decision. For too long, the people of Nigeria have endured unimaginable suffering. They deserve to feel safe in their own homes, to farm their lands without fear, and to build a future for their children. Leaders in Nigeria and partners around the world have a moral obligation to act now. Justice, safety, and peace cannot wait another day. Written and produced by Jide Adesina, Coordinator, Nigerians Stand for Good Governance Voice, Laura Smith.